Did you know that in Melon Playground, if you set the corn NPC on fire, it will start to produce popcorn? Which is pretty cool. I mean, I'm not sure what corn is doing here, but I've never been set on fire before, so perhaps this is normal. Hello and welcome to another episode of Hidden Video Game Details, the series where we take a look at some of the coolest hidden mechanics and details found in video games. As always, if you think you know of a hidden detail or Easter egg that I haven't covered before, then let me know in the comments, and if you want to help me out more than you already do by watching these videos, then check out my Patreon using the link in the description. Anyway, without further delay, let's get started. Right, let's begin today's video with a game that many of you might have forgot, and if you haven't, you probably wish you had. The Walking Dead Survival Instinct is a first-person shooter based on The Walking Dead, and it's really, really poor. Seriously, I don't know how you make shooting zombies feel this bad, but somehow Survival Instincts does it, which in a weird kind of way is kind of impressive. Anyway, in Survival Instinct, you play as Daryl Dixon, aka Sam Bridges, aka Norman Reedus, as he tries to make his way to Atlanta during the early days of the zombie apocalypse. I mean, the concept isn't terrible, but the execution... well, the execution definitely is. Now, if you've ever watched The Walking Dead, you might have noticed how the characters are sweating pretty much all the time. Daryl, in particular, always looks like he needs a good bath, and that's kind of represented in Survival Instinct. If you sprint, this will happen. So after a brief run, sweat will start to pour from the top of the screen, mimicking what it must be like to be Daryl Dixon on a hot day. Okay, granted, Daryl must be incredibly unfit if a 5-second sprint can cause him to gush like your mum when she sees me, but it's still a pretty cool detail from a very bad game. Now, we've covered a lot of Death Stranding 2 on this channel, and the things that we've seen have ranged from weird to, well, really, really weird. Well, the first of today's Death Stranding 2 details isn't weird. It's actually very impressive. Here I've placed two containers by Sam's feet that both weigh the same. First, I'm going to throw one of these containers with Sam's dominant right hand. Okay, so that's quite an impressive throw. Let's see how that compares with Sam's weaker left hand. So the container, thrown with Sam's weaker hand, lands noticeably shorter than the throw with his strong hand. Now, I'm a sucker for realistic details in games, and this has to be one of the most unnecessary realistic details in a game that I've ever seen. The other Death Stranding 2 detail is a lifesaver. No, literally, it actually saves lives. Now, death in Death Stranding 2 is something that should be avoided at all costs. You see, every death could trigger a void owl, which causes a massive explosion, destroying everything in the area. With that in mind, it's in your best interest to incapacitate enemies rather than outright kill them. Of course, sometimes that can't be helped, but there are moments that it can be. When an enemy dies in the water, this will happen. So each enemy is equipped with an automatically activated flotation device, which will prevent them from drowning. In fact, Sam himself also has one of these devices, which can be seen whenever he's swept away by a river. I mean, Death Stranding 2 isn't the first game that helps players avoid unnecessary deaths. This detail actually reminds me of the Insomniac Spider-Man games, where enemies thrown off buildings would be automatically webbed to walls instead of splattering on the concrete below, which would have given J. Jonah Jameson even more reasons to hate Spidey.
He's a menace to the entire city!
Next up is 2024's Alone in the Dark. Now, when this game released, I was interested to see what it had to offer, after having never played an Alone in the Dark game before. I was too busy at the time, so it kind of passed me by, but it was recently one of the free games given away on PlayStation Plus, so I gave it a go, and it's actually really good. Granted, I'm only around 3 to 4 hours in, but it's a nice mix of mystery, puzzles, combat, and Hopper from Stranger Things breathing really, really heavily. Now, the main antagonist in Alone in the Dark is the Dark Man, who, if I'm honest, I don't know much about at this point, but what I do know is he's scary and he pops up all over the place. Of course, at the early stage of the game that I'm in, fighting the Dark Man is pointless. You have to turn tail and run. Well, what if you decide to back yourself and try to take on the Dark Man? Well, let's find out, shall we?
It has to stop!
So if you try shooting the Dark Man during your first encounter with him, your character will turn the gun on themselves before pulling the trigger if you try shooting again. Now, like I said, I'm very early in the game, so I'm not 100% sure why this happens, but it's still a cool hidden detail that a lot of players might have missed. Speaking of games that I wanted to play but I never had the time to, up next is Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster. Now, the original Dead Rising was the first game that I played on my Xbox 360, and it blew me away. Okay, that was mainly because of the sheer amount of zombies on screen, but it was, in my opinion, a real reason to own a 360. Fast forward 19 years later, and here I am playing the Deluxe Remaster with Frank looking very different to how I remembered him. Now, there are a lot of changes in this remaster. Some good, like the more intelligent NPCs, which now act like 11-year-olds instead of 5-year-olds, and some bad, like the censorship of certain stories and characters. Something that I did like though were the many different costumes that Frank can wear. These include Capcom classics like Resident Evil characters all the way to, well, whatever the hell Cyberbots is. The skins also appear in cutscenes, which does lead to some pretty funny moments.
Can't really blame her for running from a guy with your looks.
Well, these skins aren't just for show. They do change how Frank behaves and speaks. For example, this is how Frank sounds when calling for survivors.
Hello? Anyone there? Anyone there? Anyone there? Hello?
So it's not the Frank that I remember, but it's a normal sounding voice. Well, here is how he sounds when wearing the Chainsaw Guy costume from Resident Evil 4.
Anyone there? Hello? Hello? Hello?
So, given that Frank has a bag over his head, his voice is muffled, which is cool, but not that impressive. Well, if you wear the fancy Cyberbots mech costume, he will sound like this.
Anyone there? Hello? Hello? Anyone there? Hello?
So now Frank has a robotic effect added to his voice. I mean, these skins did cost me real world money, but I do appreciate the extra effort. Oh, and it's not just voice effects. Take a listen to what it sounds like when moving with the liquor. So if you've played Resident Evil 2, the sound of the licker's claws tapping on the floor is sure to give you flashbacks to a much scarier time. One more costume-related detail can be seen when using the Chainsaw Villager from Resident Evil 4. One of the best early weapons that you can grab in Dead Rising is the chainsaw, which, as you might expect, absolutely chews through zombies. Well, here is how the chainsaw looks when holding it as normal Frank. And yep, I can confirm that is indeed a chainsaw. Well, here is what happens when you pick the chainsaw up dressed as the Resident Evil 4 guy. So the colour and design of the chainsaw will change to match the chainsaw seen in Resident Evil 4, which is really cool. The final Dead Rising detail is pretty funny. During the main story, Brad gets shot and Frank has to go to the supermarket to grab some medicine. Unfortunately, he's interrupted by the store owner, who doesn't take kindly to people coming into his shop.
This is my store!
Well, have you ever walked into a room and forgotten what you went into that room for? I know I have, and I didn't have to fight a psychotic store owner before I forgot. So if you do happen to forget why you were at the supermarket and just head back to the security room without the medicine, this funny dialogue will take place.
You went all the way out there and forgot the medicine? Are you dense? Go back and get it!
Right, let's end today's video with my current obsession, Ready or Not. Now, the reason that I'm so obsessed with Ready or Not right now is that I recently rewatched the Eggcellent Sicario. So, in my attempt to mimic the tactical action of the movie, I turned to Ready or Not, and I haven't been disappointed. Now, the first detail from Ready or Not is very subtle. In fact, some of you might not find it that impressive, but I like it. During the always depressing Valley of the Dolls mission, you have to find and secure evidence of the various horrible things that have been going on in this mansion. Well, in one of the rooms you can find an open laptop, which in terms of evidence is basically jackpot. However, around the laptop are several hard drives and a very powerful magnet. Now, if you know anything about old school mechanical hard drives, you'll know that magnets and hard drives don't mix. And a magnet this size could easily corrupt and wipe a hard drive, which I'm sure was the intention here. I mean, they could have just smashed it into pieces or something, but what do I know, I'm not a criminal. Like I said, it's a small detail, but I like that it shows that the villains were trying to cover their tracks, despite the huge amount of evidence in the basement. The other Ready or Not detail is one that I'm guessing a lot of you won't know, unless you're a complete psycho. Now, even if someone is a civilian and isn't a threat in Ready or Not, you still have to restrain them for your own safety. Here's the thing. Sometimes these apparent friendly civilians don't take too kindly to being told what to do, and if you shoot one, to send a message, then this can happen.
We no longer trust that your lead is acting in good faith. Use of force against them is authorized. Entry team, stop violating your ROE.
Getting out now.
Civilian is hit.
Dock to entry team. Proceed with mission.
Element to top.
So if you kill a civilian, you can choose a secret command that will have your squad kill you on sight. And when I say on sight, I really do mean on sight. So that's it. If you know of any cool things in games that you think I should check out, then please leave them down in the comments. Big or small, obvious or not obvious. If I think it's cool, I'll include it in a video and of course credit you like these people here. Remember, we are trying to reach 1 million subscribers, hopefully this year, so if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and helping me out. As always, thank you all for watching, and I'll speak to you all soon.